Em, can you believe we started Interview Boss in 2021?
Not really. It's insane. That's a lot of episodes and a lot of hours of talking.
Oh my gosh, it is. And if you're scrolling through all of our episodes, you might scroll straight past something that you really, really needed.
Yes, we're always getting messages from people asking us to do an episode on something, and I'm like, we already have.
So we've put together playlists to help you find the episodes that are exactly what you need, suited to your situation.
They're all categorized. If you're applying for jobs, we have episodes about resumes, cover letters, job ads. If you've been offered your dream job, we have episodes on resigning, exit interviews, and how to impress at your new company.
And we even have a very special playlist that's very popular for if you have an interview coming up immediately and you need just our most recommended hard-hitting episodes between now and then.
For all our last-minute listeners. It's all there for you. You can browse by category and check out all the playlists at interviewboss.com.au/podcast.
You think you're leaving a toxic environment, but if you haven't done the right, back channeling and you don't have the right networks to ask about the next environment, then you might jump into something even tougher.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Interview Boss. My name is Emma. I'm a radio journalist who's teamed up with my sister to give you advice, inspiration, and support when you're looking for a new job. Sarah is a HR and recruitment professional, and together we're excited to give you all the tips, tricks, and behind-the-scenes knowledge to help you in your career.
Hey, Em, and welcome back, everyone. Em, who is getting an Interview Boss Shoot Your Shot shout out in this special episode?
Kendra, who bought us 5 coffees and sent a message that we could have only dreamed of receiving when we set out to do this 4 years ago, because this is our exact mission, and to have someone validate that is just epic. So without further ado, this is what Kendra had to say. Hi, Emma and Sarah. Y'all's podcast was a game changer for my job search. Prior to finding your podcast, I was somewhat actively job hunting for about 3 years. My resume and experience were enough to have the interview doors open, but every single time, my in-person interviews fell flat due to overthinking and rehearsing whatever answers other social media, in inverted commas, experts advised, rehearsing over and over the, in inverted commas, best responses like a script. I found your podcast at the best possible time. I was interviewing for a director level role in HR with no prior direct experience in HR. One of the first podcasts I listened to, y'all gave the advice, want to know what you'll be asked during an interview? Newsflash, you can't predict what you'll be asked. The facade was lifted. I would answer each question moving forward with my best bits and how to be a storyteller of my experiences. My best bits showed the interviewers the unique value I bring to the table. After an introductory conversation, the hiring leaders took a step back and completely changed the function of the role so that it aligned with the skill sets that I have. In a sense, customizing a role so that they could hire me. I greatly appreciate the enthusiasm, humor, and wisdom you share on every episode. I graduated about 6 months ago.
And she means graduated like from the podcast, by the way. That's also in inverted commas. Yeah.
Yes. At the time of accepting this director role, my salary went up 59%. And about a month ago, I received another raise due to industry competitiveness. My salary today is now 91% above what I was making 6 months ago in my last role, where my skill sets were valued, but I wasn't. The interview process for this position was brutally long, 4 months with multiple rounds of interviews, but your podcast was like a warm cup of coffee to figuratively and literally fuel me. Thank you for all you continue to do. I've recommended your podcast to multiple friends and family members.
Oh,
wow.
Kendra, there's something about this that if you've listened a lot, I read about the terrible advice of say exactly this. Imagine everyone comes in and they recite you this thing that they got from TikTok or whatever. It's terrible and it's not what interviews are about. And I hate that Kendra had to go through that. Honestly, I wish that she didn't have to. But I also love that she found us and that she had that light bulb moment And we didn't have to like rubbish them in order for it to all make sense.
It speaks for itself that she was getting interviews, but she wasn't doing herself justice because she was giving these fluffy answers where you say a lot of words, but you're not actually conveying any information or helpful understanding of who you are.
Because this stuff makes sense. Like, it's simple, but it's not easy. I think that's the thing. It's not that this all is like some secret. It's like when you hear it, you're like, wow, is that really it? Like, I just have to actually kind of be myself. It's incredible. And like 91% above. And they changed the function of the role because they liked her so much. And she was like, here's my skill sets. Here's my amazing stuff that I've done. And they were like, we could use that, but it's not quite what that role was that we were thinking about. It's actually in this other thing.
Let's reinvent the whole wheel because you're so amazing.
It's just incredible. I am in love with that. It's so good. Now, if you are like Kendra and you are struggling and you don't know how to put your best bits together, prep for your interviews, you need some more guidance than what you can get from the podcast. Maybe you need some more help. You can check out all of our support at interviewboss.com.au/coaching. And you can read about our interview academy, which is where you can do all of this in-depth learning. We've got guides, resources, worksheets, quizzes, stuff that you can help you go through the practical skills so that you're ready for your interview step by step by step by step. Or if you've got the basics and, you know, there's something that you're stuck on and you need my one-on-one help, I also do one-on-one sessions with people from all around the world. So jump on our website, check out which support might be right for you.
This week, we have a very special guest joining us, Mel Storey.
She is an in-house lawyer, but not just any in-house lawyer. She was 2023 In-House Lawyer of the Year. She is the podcast host of the podcast Counsel, and she's your career big sis on TikTok and Instagram and an all-round thought leader. Welcome to the Interview Boss podcast, Mel Storey.
This episode is a must listen if you are considering studying law, about to graduate law. Anyone in the legal field must listen. Even I, who have nothing to do with the legal field, found this so valuable, the general career sentiment. Mel is someone who definitely didn't get here the easy way. She took a few detours, and I think a lot of people will be really encouraged and inspired by her story. So Mel, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. We are very excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy we could make this happen.
And I wanted to tell you first, I don't know if we've told you about this, but the way that this podcast all came about, the stars aligned because we actually got a message from your friend, Sally Prosser, who slid into our DMs and sent a lovely voice note about how she saw a post on TikTok about us from her friend and she's been obsessed and falling down the rabbit hole. And I was having a moment because I actually booked in a voice coaching session with her when I very first started news reading. She was like, when I was fresh out of uni, I found her online, did a session with her. So to firstly have her like sliding into my project all these years later was like, whoa, I look up to you so much. This is epic. And then I was like, wait, who's the friend? Because we want to go digging. And then she told us that you made a post about us. And then when I told Sarah, Sarah was having a fangirl moment.
I was like, I know Mel. I've seen her videos. And I had you written down on a list of people that, I'm going to reach out one day when I have more time. I'm going to have all these guests on. And you were on that list. So it all just kind of happened.
I love that.
You found us. Tell us the story about you had a friend who was listening or something like that. I love how this all happened.
Yes. So like firstly, shout out to Sal Prosser, another Brizzy queen. We love her. She's amazing. Great TikTok as well. I provide career advice on an ad hoc basis, online, all over the place really, but on Instagram, career big sis style. Someone reached into my DMs and said, hey, I'm going for a job interview in a law firm. Have you got any suggestions on, specific things that I should ask or say or not say? And then we had a bit of a chat and they mentioned that they were doing all of this prep and that they were listening to your podcast as part of that as well. And I hadn't heard of your work and the project. So then I went down the rabbit hole and immediately fell in love. And when you come across like-minded people on the internet, you're like, oh, these are my people. So then I got on TikTok and shouted from the rooftops hey, everyone, I found this new podcast. If you're going for an interview, if you're looking at career transitions or, just trying to generally think about switching something to somewhere, you need a little confidence boost, maybe check this out. So then here we are. That's the story.
It's a chain reaction of shout outs that have led us here.
Isn't it? And wonderful, incredible women supporting each other. I love that. It's incredible. We are so excited to have you here. And look, I've done plenty of interview coaching sessions as well with people who are looking for law jobs, either going into that graduate role, really competitive, or they're kind of going in-house, or they're having a career change or whatever. So I know that plenty of our listeners are in that field. But I also think stick around if you're listening and you're not in the legal space, because I still think this is going to be very relevant, kind of general takeaways about careers for you to learn. So I thought we'd kick off with kind of people who might be law students. And I think a lot of people go into law school not wanting to necessarily practice, but a lot of people do. How early should people start thinking about clerkships and work experience during law school? That surprised me that we got to second year and people were already working out where they were going to be clerking and applying for things. It catches up to you so quickly. 1 minute you're at O week and the next you're having to think about it.
I'm glad you read that. I would have said clerkships. Is it said clerkships?
Yeah.
There you go.
I went to ANU. I didn't study law, but every single other person at ANU that I went to uni with studied law. So I was adjacent to the law world for quite a long time.
But what about when they talk about the clerk award in admin? Is that clerk award?
Yeah.
I'm having a moment. Okay, side note. I might be the only one out there that never knew that's how it was said, but that's okay.
There's other people out there that are lawyers and they're like, I thought that too, Emma.
Exactly. That's such a wonderful illustration of how the law just makes simple things feel a little bit tricky sometimes. And I think it inadvertently excludes people who maybe don't know the correct lingo or this tiny little inflection. And then it's you kind of have to learn along the way. And that's exactly how the clerkship process creeps up on you. And I think the work experience and legal experience is a separate piece, but the clerkships are such a structured program that all of the big commercial law firms, they put on for the penultimate year student. That's another of those words. It's your second last year. And you start to go through what I call the Hunger Games, because it absolutely is. It's so intense, where essentially you're looking for a place, a very coveted place in a top firm to get essentially an internship experience, but it is paid. They roll out the red carpet, they wine you, they dine you. It's an absolutely wonderful experience. There's not an intense amount of pressure for work. They're showing you all the best of the firm. They're courting you because they want you to come back as a graduate when you finish your law degree. And from that pool of clerks over the year, they have a winter clerkship, a summer clerkship, and across all of the different offices, that's where they will usually pull all of their graduates from. So it's this pipeline of talent, and it happens so quickly. You start to apply for these, and if you're doing a concentrated degree or a single degree, you might be in your second year and you're starting to look at this, and it's very daunting because it comes out of nowhere and it feels like this golden path is laid before you that you didn't know about, you weren't sure you were supposed to care about, and now you really care about it, and you're freaking out thinking that if you don't get one of these clerkships, that your entire legal career is over before it's even begun, which is entirely false, but it is the narrative. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that is, but it's a tough one. And I think if you're coming from, like myself, I was the first in my family to go to university, to law school. I didn't know anybody. Yeah, we don't know the lingo. We don't know how you get these placements, that they're even a thing. I thought I would think about it once I was graduating.
Yeah. Or maybe in my last year, maybe.
Just, it's not exactly how it works.
How sort of lucrative are these? Because I found it interesting that you said they are wining and dining you and they want you, where typically in my experience in the media, it's the opposite. I'm begging people for an internship, take me, please. But you sort of made it sound as if it's they're trying to attract you. So is it accessible, or are they hard to come by, as in there's not that many?
Well, there's only, each firm will take a different amount, but there might be maybe 50 over the two programs, maybe, 15 to 30 clerks, in some of the bigger firms in Sydney or Melbourne. And they are looking for the best and brightest in a very specific way. They're looking at your GPA or your weighted average of your grades. They're looking for extracurriculars. They're looking for university association involvement. They're looking for, volunteering and saving a small nation in Africa and all kinds of crazy and ambitious things that law students like to get up to. And the bar is getting higher and higher every year, I find. And I think that because it is so competitive, the students that pass this test and these really high requirements, they are seen to be the next crop of high achievers in a very specific way. And so they are courted because a lot of them will get more than one clerkship and often get more than one offer. And I remember when I was at uni, I didn't get any. And I mean, I'm not surprised at all knowing what I know now. My grades were average at best, but I was so crestfallen. And I had friends that had multiple offers and they were tossing up whether shall I do Free Hills or shall I do this? It was so hard. I remember thinking, I will take the dregs that you don't want, babe. Give me the ones that you don't want. But that's how the industry works. And might I add that this is for such a small portion of how you can practice law. It's just that it gets overblown and completely disproportionate because it's the only place that is advertising with such intensity to students on campus. So that's just
I think that's a general tip for anyone. We always talk about that first job post-uni, or even in this case, while you're still at uni, is the hardest one you'll ever get, in my opinion. Once you're in, great. The rest of your career is never going to be that difficult again to work out what that first kind of landing place is for you. And I felt that way too, coming out of a psychology degree, going, hey, I don't want to be clinical. What are the places I can go? And it felt like everyone was going into large graduate programs. And that's not the only way out of a degree at all. There are plenty of companies who will be hiring one graduate in just one little team somewhere, and that'd be the best job you could ever have. It's just that you're not going to get an advertising campaign for that one particular job. It's just going to be hiding somewhere on Indeed or something like that you need to come across.
It's kind of that hive mind mentality because, of course, if you're on campus, all your peers are vying for the same spot. Of course, it's going to feel like it's like the HSC, like your year 12 exams. You think that's the biggest thing of your life, and then you graduate and you realise no one gives a shit and you've never been asked what your score was. But yeah, I guess when you're in it, it feels huge.
I was thinking that before when you were talking, Mel, about your marks and your weighted average and whatever. I think a lot of that comes from the law space, and that really is a thing in some pathways of what exactly your marks are and stuff. I think people generalize that to every other degree where your average marks matter, and it doesn't necessarily translate. It's in certain cases, in certain places, they will care about it, but it's not everywhere, everyone, all the time. That's going to care about exactly what your marks are.
Absolutely.
And in terms of tips for applying for legal graduate programs, what would you say about that?
I think if you finished up your degree, say you haven't been through a clerkship process, and so you might not be on the radar for one of, 6 or 7 big firms, and you can still absolutely throw your hat in the ring. It is difficult when you don't have those connections and you haven't been able to make that statement get to know. And I tend to think that the pool of graduates really does come through the clerkship, but that's not to say it's impossible, because that's in fact what my journey was. I didn't get a clerkship. So I went backpacking in Europe, ran out of money, came home.
I love that.
And
That's so good.
Oh, it's the best thing I ever did. I mean, I didn't have a job to go to. So once I came back to Australia, I reached out to the careers development office at university, and I had a contact there, and I said, hey, can you help me with my resume? How does this look? I'm applying for jobs. They talked me through some things. It was very helpful. Next week, she called me and said, hey, we've got an interview opportunity at Cause Chambers Westgarth. Would that be of interest to you? And I was just like, oh, immediately, yes. Large national commercial law firm, highly reputable. I would, absolutely love to do that. They were looking for extra graduates because they were busier than they thought they might be. So they reached out to their university contacts and said, do you know any students that are looking, that are star candidates as such, which on paper, except for my marks, I did tick a lot of those boxes because I was involved in everything and Little Miss Campus. So I had a lot of that stuff, but I certainly...
That doesn't surprise me for some reason.
No, it's... I'm on brand.
Were you one of those people that was trying to hand me flyers when I was just trying to go get a coffee?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I was everywhere. I was doing drama society. I was doing law society. I was doing cheerleading. That won't surprise anyone.
That's epic.
Yeah, I was actually not bad in terms of, because I'm quite tall, I was a base. And so I would throw people up in the air and only dropped one person, which is not, I don't like to think about it, but overall, not so bad.
That's a good percentage.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're still friends. So it's all good.
Hey, that tells me you're reliable, hold the team together, anchor vibes.
Right. I spoke to it in my interview. I did speak to it in the interview. And to cut the long story short, I ended up becoming a graduate without going through the formal process. So the tips would be to still have a crack. You never know. And you have to also think outside the box. There are so many opportunities, and a law degree is a wonderful stepping stone into the professional corporate world in many ways. It shows, you're a reasonably intelligent person who can apply yourself to something difficult that requires critical thinking and communication skills. And there's research, there's, all kinds of things that come out that can be demonstrated by a law degree. And that doesn't have to be practicing. But if you do want to practice and you're looking to get into being a lawyer, the commercial firms are one thing. You've got not-for-profits, you've got government agencies, you've got the legal aid and that kind of social justice space that are hiring, Community Legal Centre, Caxton Legal here in Brisbane. You can look into the world where I am, the in-house world. In corporates have legal departments inside the business, and I didn't know this at uni. We are growing. The trend is upwards. These teams are getting bigger because executives are realising having your legal function in-house instead of paying through the nose to get legal support through a firm is actually really smart. So law firm money is, somewhat being reinvested in-house in legal teams, many law firms as such, devoted just for that company, forming in-house. And so there are many paths as a graduate kind of coming through that space. You can work, across so many different areas. And it's exciting, I think, at that time to start thinking about what might be a job that you haven't even heard of, but could you imagine? I'll give you an example. You love Mecca, you love makeup, and you also got a law degree. You might also be really into social media. Perhaps there is, and I know this because I'm leading the question because I know there is, but perhaps you could be an in-house lawyer for Mecca that also gets to work on specifically on their marketing and social media campaigns. Like that exists. And it's this perfect Venn diagram that someone found for themselves based on knowing themselves and playing to their strengths. So there's, so much excitement. And the best thing that exists now that didn't before is LinkedIn. It's an insane research resource. And if I had it, when I graduated, I would have been an absolute fiend, but it wasn't there. The amount of public information, people's career paths, jobs, you can search by company, you can drop in the DMs of just about anybody. They might not get back to you. They might, they might leave you on red, which is totally fine, but you can still reach them. And that is unheard of. So I would utilize that tool to the fullest extent if I was career and kind of job hunting.
Funny, when you just mentioned then the Mecca thing, what comes to mind for me that's been in the news heaps lately is MCO Beauty and their dupes and how everyone's like, how do they get away with this? I think it's just started to hit the US, which a lot of our listeners are over there, but, they dupe Charlotte Tilbury, all the bougie stuff, and everyone's been like, how do they get away with this? It's so similar. And the ABC actually interviewed their legal person, the head of, who was like, we get away with it because this is what the law says and this. So that is just testament that there are so many jobs out there that you probably can't even imagine, but super different opportunities.
girl I went to uni with, shout out Lauren, if you're listening, she had an incredible private practice firm life and recently was working for Condé Nast. So was always loved Vogue, and that was like dream job. She was doing that for a little while. How incredible, like to bring two worlds together that you really love. There are so many combinations of that. And I think definitely the path is more varied than you think it is. It feels like there's only one option. Hey, if I miss out on this, then there's no other option. I'm going to have to not practice. There's so many ways. I've heard lots of things, and this is probably through some of those firms, but it may even be through other graduate programs as well. All sorts of unique parts of the recruitment process. I think you said the Hunger Games earlier. That kind of rings a bell of like, people have asked me questions about, oh, there's a mixer that we have to go to. And like, do I talk to people? Like, what do I do? Are there other kind of unique parts of the recruitment process that you've come across in the law world?
I think the big one is that people just either don't know or don't talk about is that there's so much AI and computer, input on the back end that looks and sifts through the applications before they even get into the hands of a human. And I think that's really important to just normalize how difficult it can be to even have a human response to your application. They initially will cut off GPAs below a certain percentage. It'll be from firm to firm, but I hear it's 5.5, 6, out of a 7-point scale. It's high. And if you don't meet that, you just kind of automatically get a thanks, but no thanks. And it's robotic and it's very cold. But when there's such a huge pool, I guess that's one of the ways that they sift through the talent as such. And I do think that firms are maybe starting to get open to looking at different practices because they are missing out on a diverse skill set by narrowly, you've just got to think about the type of person who's working full-time, studying part-time, maybe has caring responsibilities, doing really interesting things outside of their law studies, but they can't dedicate 100% of their time. They are getting really great credits. They're learning, they're achieving, and they're a brilliant person who would be a great addition to a team. But they don't get seen by the computer in the first instance because, compared maybe to someone who has a family situation that allows them to stay at home. Maybe, the bank of mum and dad is looking after them. They don't have to work part-time. They're not serving drinks on a Thursday or doing retail on a Saturday to pay the bills. And so, of course, they can nerd out to their heart's content and get a high distinction on every assignment. And I'm not saying that that's not a bad way to be. And kudos to you and what an awesome privilege. However, we then end up getting cookie cutter type personalities, perhaps, that feed through into this system that is already fairly remote and, exclusive, prestigious by nature anyway. And we talk about, diversity and actually getting people at the table in these big corporates and these big firms that come from different backgrounds. Well, it all starts with the way that you hire at the very beginning. However, it is what it is. And I believe that then you go into a pool where some computer somewhere looks at, keyword search in your application, and who knows what those words might be. And then if you pass a general threshold, your application is perhaps seen by an HR professional. Maybe then it goes to the selection committee that's made up of partners, senior associate. And it's just so brutal. And it's just nice to talk about it so that you don't feel so dejected if it doesn't go your way, because so much of it was out of your control in terms of a human did not have a negative response or a negative impression to your application.
We talk about this sometimes, well, quite a lot actually, in terms of the robot thing. And I completely appreciate what you're saying. You clarified as you went on about the marks and stuff. A human has still set up those gates. They've still decided this is our number for this year. There's not some kind of overlord that's deciding this stuff. They are setting up those stages. And we've talked about before as well, in volume recruitment, you have to cull somehow to get to a manageable number because you cannot possibly have a human read every single person's application. It's just not possible. So you have to decide. And when you're a firm that everybody applies to, you kind of get to choose, well, higher is better. We're just going to set the mark at somewhere. And yeah, you're right. If you don't kind of hit all those things, that doesn't mean anything kind of more about you. You just might be better off in a process where you can, be looked at by a person who's going to consider you as a whole from the beginning, as opposed to having to tick all of those things off. Once you're shortlisted and you've kind of had a few conversations and whatever, what are the things that someone might be looking for? And this could not only apply to those large firms, this could even apply to an in-house that you might be hiring for, or a completely different role that someone's going for. What are the things that you're looking for in like a graduate lawyer? You're obviously not expecting them to have done amazing things on their own. And I think some people get really confused about, I don't have anything to talk about. I've never got work experience. What do I say? They're not going to want me. We often say, what's the best thing you can be as a graduate?
Keen, excited, yes. Enthusiastic. What I lack in experience, I make up for in enthusiasm.
I love that. And that's so true. And it is looking for someone with a genuine interest and a curiosity to learn, to come along for the journey, not to be a passenger. They're excited about the area or the practice, whatever the firm might be doing, the company is showing a genuine interest. You've actually had a look at the website and you understand a little bit about what the company might be doing or different matters the firm might be working on. That stuff sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised how often people don't really do a bit of research. And if you're going through the motions and you're trying to just get a job, I understand it can be so taxing emotionally to invest deeply into all of these processes where you just might not necessarily get that role. But if you can show up with that energy, it's the only real way to stand out.
Interview Academy might be the perfect thing you're looking for. Interview Academy is a course Sarah has been working on after delivering hundreds of interview coaching sessions and getting incredible results.
But unfortunately, I'm only one gal living in an Aussie time zone who works a day job, and all of that mean I can't help everyone one-on-one, which drove me crazy.
So for over a year, Sarah's been working on turning all of those amazing lessons into an on-demand, step-by-step interview prep course. We hold your hand through the entire thing,
and you can do it at home in your own time and get instant access right now. Check it out at interviewboss.com.au/interview-academy. The link is in the show notes.
If you're doing that in-person interview, having that energy and that passion, you can feel that in the room, and that is so powerful. I love interviewing and working with early career professionals that haven't worked in the law. Show me that you've worked at McDonald's and you have dealt with your fair share of angry customers, or maybe hungover individuals who really need their bacon and egg McMuffin now. Conflict resolution is real. Prioritizing under pressure, working in retail, someone might be crying in the changing room because they're not fitting the jeans they thought they would fit. Showing empathy and leading with care and explaining maybe different options and problem solving under pressure. Come on, this stuff is real life, and the law is a body, an institution that governs humans, that's governed by humans. It's a human thing. It's not a science, a thing that we can put into, the way that you might look at the difference between a science and a humanity. The humanity is because it's a human study. It's all about people.
And it's operating in grey and influencing and judgment and decisions and all those kinds of things. Yeah, you can get the answer of, okay, bring up these XYZ cases. And I'm sure that's where AI is kind of able to jump in. But it's the human, particularly in an in-house context, you've got to be influencing those decision makers to go, here's the risks, here's the opportunities. It's a business decision. Which way do you want to go? You've got to try and influence and push them to say what the strategy might be. There might be particular competitors. Oh, I think if we do this, then they'll respond like this. There's so much of that in the law about what you do.
Oh, for sure. I once had a wonderful interview with a paralegal, ended up getting the job. And I asked her about, it was a very specific question, and managing difficult salespeople that were demanding. And it was because I knew what her experience would be if she got the role, and that the challenge of that role at that time was working with with people with really big quotas that were really pushing hard to meet their deadlines. And so it affected all of the support functions, which is really common. She did not have legal experience that could speak to this or even kind of corporate experience. But what she told me was that she was recently had a family member of hers living with her, a teenager, and they were somewhat defiant about doing certain things. And she was their guardian and had to try and find ways to influence the outcome, which was, you know, going to school or getting off the PlayStation or whatever it might have been. And she gave me some wonderful examples of how she met that person where they are. You know, they'd go and play sport together and just try and connect on a different level. And she just gave some amazing, I guess, examples and insight into how to deal with people that don't really want to deal with you. And that stuff, that just won me over instantly. And it had nothing to do with, I have had this exact same experience before, so I can speak exactly to this example. Thinking more broadly and just kind of demonstrating those skills in other ways can be so captivating.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand about being victimized by a pushy sales agent in media. That's a universal experience in the corporate world. Oh, just because you're not going to get your budget and you're over-promising and saying, I'm sure news can give it a mention. And I'm going, that's not newsworthy, not mentioning it, sorry. They're like, I've got budget, I'm trying to win them. I'm like, I don't care, that's not newsworthy. Don't over-promise without talking to me.
Oh, it's such a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah. Or they're like, why can't you just agree to their terms? Just sign the contract. They just want to take it. Yeah. And they don't understand any of what they're doing because they'll be running away as soon as something goes wrong. Oh, it wasn't me. The lawyers looked at it. Oh, I don't know.
Oh, it's with legal. Legal said it's fine. If I had $1 for every time, I think, look, that is the thing is it's this beautiful dance because revenue generating roles keep the lights on. And if they don't do their job, I haven't got a job. So I see that. I respect that. But I'm also here to protect the company and we can't just agree to any old things. Yeah.
And you can't have your company run by the lawyers either because then they would just be like, no, everything's too risky. Like, you know, we need both. We need the go-getters as well. I want to switch into the challenge someone might be having where they're thinking about going in-house. Maybe they've always wanted to, but they were told, oh, you have to do your private practice time and then you can move. I loved this quote that I found on your LinkedIn. They're looking for genuine passion and interest rather than an imagined retreat for billable life. I really love that. You should be running towards in-house and not just away from the 6-minute increments. Like there needs to be something that you're looking to get out of it and not just like, oh, I'm done with this life. I loved that sentiment and I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm so glad. This is one of my favorite topics and was really why I started my podcast 4 years ago to explore this little section of legal life, being an in-house lawyer, you know, flying the flag for what we do and how we operate, because it is a very different style of practice. That's a bit of like mythology around it. And I think that's changing, which is amazing. But there certainly was when I was coming up through the ranks. And I also share this daily behind the scenes on Instagram, of all places, about what life is really like. And I guess I'm providing the content I wish I had available to me when I was a junior lawyer, wanting to make this exact shift because I couldn't find it. And you cannot be what you cannot see. I'm such a firm believer in it. I felt like I was flying a little blind. I made the transition from private practice to in-house at about 3 years post-admission. And at the time, that was completely like, oh my goodness, what has she done? It was very risque. She's going against the grain. This is not the rules. The golden path says that you should probably wait until you're a senior associate, 8 years, maybe 5 at a stretch. But there was such judgment and perhaps just a misunderstanding about everything. And the people that were the loudest in giving me the advice were the people that had actually never done it themselves and that didn't know what it was to do that. I was so relatively young, but I just had this feeling that, well, 2 things. Number one, if I was really wrong and I wasn't ready, well, I could always come back to private practice.
Yeah. The door's not closed.
It's absolutely not. I left on good terms, as you do. And you know what? I might even bring a client back with me because my employer might, want to stick with someone they know and who knows. But I also thought, well, if I'm not ready to be a junior legal counsel, then why are they looking for junior legal counsel? If that exists for a 2 to 4 year lawyer with commercial law experience, tick, 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 that's me. So let's have a go. Let's see what's, the best that can happen is what I ask myself. And they always said, oh, you can always come back. And I said, that's so true. I haven't. And it's been like 10 years now. Never say never, but I find that the older I get and the more into my career I get, the better I am at leaning into my strengths. And for me, being an in-house lawyer is just a no-brainer. I get to do a little bit of everything. I'm a jack or Jill of all trades, a master of some. I don't have to be a subject matter expert. In fact, I'm a subject matter expert in knowing where the boundaries of my expertise lie and when I need to call for help, and then who to call, the resourcefulness required, the networking, the understanding of the legal profession and who's who and who's good and who to go and this and that, and doing it quickly because the CEO is calling you from a plane, and when they get off at the other side, they need this handled. Having those relationships and being able to pick up the phone is crucial. And I love that stuff. I love, love, love it. So that for me has just been the most perfect spot for me to shine. And I think I knew that pretty early as a private practice lawyer. I felt like I was the odd one out, that I wasn't getting excited about the new cases or some interesting, random high court judgment on penalties. But I was like, well, yeah, okay, but what does this mean in practice? What do I actually need to know in the real world? I thought I was the weird one. Turns out that just means I was maybe a square peg in a round hole. And in fact, I have found the place where I fit. And as you go further into your career, finding the industry and the types of people and the companies that really work for you even further, the cultures where you thrive, that's this beautiful evolution of the career as well. So I'm just getting better and better at choosing these things, I think. I think that my advice is, I have so much, and I can get as specific as anyone would want, but very broadly, starting to connect with recruiters is important. They get the best jobs for in-house, and the ones that specialize in in-house are the ones you want. The ones that don't just plug and play and just kind of, rinse and repeat. You want someone that understands that they're a career agent for you. And those recruiters exist. And they are, again, this goes to your network, knowing who's who and what's what. You might need to know these recruiters if you're going to build out a legal team in time of your own, and you're going to need someone to help you access the market. And the best thing about it is there's this whole thing called the hidden job market as well for in-house roles, where they might come to the recruiter and say, hey, we don't really want to advertise and get inundated. It doesn't always look good for a company to be always hiring lawyers and making it public. Depending on the image you're trying to present.
We've got a lot of problems.
Right. But it can be, even if you're thinking, people really notice this stuff. If someone's looking for a really senior M&A lawyer, mergers and acquisitions, you might then think, oh, maybe they're gearing up for an IPO. Maybe they're gearing up for some interesting exit event. So you can piece things together that can be sensitive. So they'll go to the recruiters and say, off the record, quietly, who do you know? Who can we connect with? And you want to be at the top of the list if that's, if you're in that sweet spot. And then oftentimes there's this hidden job market where the recruiter will chat with you, get a sense of what you're about, where you'll place well. They'll go to some of their clients who might be, say, an interesting solar panel, renewable energy company, and they've just placed the general counsel there a year ago. They check back in and say, hey, how are you going? Look, I know you might not be hiring. I've got a gun mid-level. They've got energy resource experience. I know you might not be thinking about it, but if you can swing the budget, this is a great person. Can I at least get an interview kind of going? So that happens all the time. The recruiters is number one. And if you're not sure, just DM me, and especially if you're in Brisbane, I can hook you up. There is some great people, and I don't want to start spruiking names because they should probably pay me if I'm going to do that. Pay me in, I don't know, Louboutin shoes or something. But no, I can't be bought. I can't be bought. I think that's the first piece. And then starting to get that commercial experience if you haven't got it, getting secondment experience if you haven't had any, putting your hands up to go and do an internal placement with the client to get a taste for it.
It's a great tester, because it's like, I haven't left the life, but I'm going to work out if this is actually right for me. And I think I've actually hired for not heaps, but a couple of in-house legal roles. And I've always advertised direct, and I've found great candidates directly. So love the recruiters. We are pro recruiter here. I think the legal recruiters are a lot like HR recruiters, where they really care and they're going to remember you and work with you for years to come.
Some of them will, for sure. They stick around. They seem to really stick.
Less transactional in that space because they just can't get away with it, because HR people and legal people, they're not going to put up with being wheeled and dealed like that. Like, to be good in the space and to survive.
Your reputation is everything.
Yeah, they need to be relationship based.
I think you're right. Yeah, for sure.
But definitely look at those ads.
Funny that you just mentioned reputation. Speaking of that, does the reputation of a law firm that you might get hired at matter? If so, how much?
Or your law school. I think both of those things are like controversial, like, oh, you have to have the right name.
I wonder if this is different in the legal industry, because for me, in journalism and media, where jobs are a bit lucrative and hard to come by, we had university lecturers telling us, like, if you get offered a job with the Daily Mail, which for anyone that isn't aware, trash, gutter journalism, horrific.
Emma, we're never going to be sponsored by the Daily Mail.
Oh, I'm okay with that. Would not want to ever work there. They're like, if you get a job offer at the Daily Mail, you're taking it. You will take whatever job you can to get the first job and blah, blah, blah. And you've got to put your morals aside and you can't be fussy. And obviously that's just...
I thought that was going a different direction. I thought your lecturers were going to be telling you don't go there.
No, they were saying go there.
See, even they say.
Of course, it's up to personal discretion and I wouldn't heed that advice. But yeah, that was very much the sentiment. So is it completely different in the legal world?
I think there is still an element of prestige and a certain panache that some universities have and certain law firms look for, certain law schools. And it's the same as with the grades. When you've got an abundance, an oversupply of law students, you can afford to be a little picky. And what you might be looking for is going to perhaps be some of those more legacy universities, the ones with deeper ties to the law firm because of all the alumni. That, you know, it's so old school and pretentious in that way, but it is what it is. And if you understand the game and you're listening early enough, you try to position yourself in the place that's going to give you those opportunities. I do think, however, that the game is changing and things are shifting. People are looking for universities and styles of study that are actually going to really suit them and their preferences for learning, whether that's online or, you know, in a particular location, however that might be. They're also looking for a real world experience and something that's rooted in a reality with real tangible practicality and job outcomes that they can speak to. So it's going to be a personal preference for sure, but I do still think it would be remiss of me to pretend that that's not how some of the recruitment still takes place. Humans are flawed and sometimes it's the path of least resistance and going with what you know. And I think that that doesn't have the best outcomes for diverse thinking, diversity, people coming from interesting and unique backgrounds, bringing interesting and unique perspectives. But that change is slow. That is slow. I personally couldn't tell you if I had ever really looked at where somebody went to university so much as, say, for a junior lawyer or a paralegal role. I am looking at the general presentation of their application and their CV, like if it's well written and how it's presented. It gives me the first indication of how they'll write and present the work.
I was going to say that's very, like, a typo is just not going to fly because that's your job.
Yeah, a little bit. And I think that I like to see that different experience. I like to see a human element. Do you have an interest outside of your work that's really unique and shows who you are as a human? Because if you're coming through into my lap, someone has already looked at it and done a first pass, and that's going to be a HR or the whatever system it might be. And that means you can probably do the job. Now it's a matter of, oh, is this somebody that I might, you know, want to work with 40 hours a week or however long it might be? And that comes back to the human piece.
People really underestimate that.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we say it, oh, they're like, oh, whatever, they just might be making it up. But it's so good to hear it from someone who's actually hiring. Like, most of the people who apply can probably do the job. That's just the bare minimum. It's all the other things. Are you going to be incredible at this job? Are we going to match each other's strengths and weaknesses and work really well together? Like, so many other things you might be factoring in. Are you going to work really well with the sales team and be able to win them over and make things easier for everyone? Like, all of those things are going to factor in.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. I feel like we have so many more questions. We could go on literally for ages. But Em, is there anything that you want to throw in as like a last question?
Closing calls. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know much about this, but I have heard passing comments here and there that the vibe of when you're a new, fresh lawyer, that it can be tough, the long hours, the expectation that you are the last to leave and you slog it away and you do all the shitty things. Is that changing? If it's not, because sometimes we always say we don't tell you what an ideal world it should be, we tell you for the world that it actually is. So if that is still reality, tips for surviving, treading water, getting through that.
It is still the reality for many, many graduates. I think it's shifting slowly as law firms embrace technology and things like AI and large processing models to process huge pieces of, say, evidence in discovery, as an example, instead of, somebody having to go through it manually, which is a huge piece of the work that juniors would typically do. Even things like in a big corporate deal, you would do due diligence is what it's called, where you have a look at just mountains of contracts in a data room. It used to be in an actual room and now it's online and you can keyword search and do all kinds of things. So there is technology that is helping, which is great. There will still be an element of you are at the bottom of the ladder and you are climbing again. So in the same way that you felt at the start of university or even at the start of high school, where you're just like, what is going on? What am I doing? How do I get here? What's this class? Oh my gosh. It's daunting because it's new and it's the start of the new ladder. I think that you don't do yourself any favors by kind of coming in and expecting to be up the ladder a little further than you are. And that's not to say that you should accept poor behavior. That's an entirely, different kettle of fish. There are still workplace laws that everybody needs to abide by. So you cannot be treated horrifically or harassed or bullied. That's a different, and in our profession, that's a problem as well. And it does tend to affect more junior lawyers because they may not have grown in confidence yet, or they worked so hard to get the job, any job, that they feel this sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to be here and I better not speak up or I'll lose this opportunity.
Don't rock the boat. Just, yeah.
Totally. It's weaponized and I think it's still a problem. And there are more senior practitioners like myself, Steph Costi. There's literally dozens coming out of nowhere speaking up and saying, actually, we're the leaders now. Wait a minute. And we've been through it and we're not putting up with it anymore, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And the old paradigm of, I had to do it tough and so you will too, is so not cutting it. It is so unacceptable. And I think that millennial managers, very generally speaking, of course, are shifting that. And I'm proud to be a part of that movement in a small way. But, there's still work to be done. So the tips, there is a point where it is just not okay and you need to leave. And you need to do that for your own mental health and well-being and your own sustainable career in the law, or you'll be burnt out and so scarred that you'll leave the profession and will lose an amazing talent. And I've seen it happen too many times. And I would counsel anyone, and I get this a lot in my DMs, so I know it's real, but they worry that I've only been here for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Will this look bad on my CV? It's a really tough one.
We get that all the time. Yeah.
I get it. It's such a hard thing because otherwise it feels like a prison sentence and you're just counting down the days until you hit this arbitrary number.
Socially acceptable time. Fuck that. Get out of there.
Yeah. And look, it's a tough one because sometimes you jump from, the frying pan into the fire, or the other way, whatever that thing is, where you think you're leaving a toxic environment. But if you haven't done the right, back channeling and you don't have the right networks to ask about the next environment, then you might jump into something even tougher.
We say this all the time. If you make that panic decision and you go into something else bad, you're just on a spiral then. And, you're kind of better off to make a conscious decision. Okay, how am I going to do this correctly? What's my deadline? Like, even get out of there, take a break and then go into something new so that at least that next step is the right one, as opposed to making a panic decision and then you have that same experience. And again, you've got 2 short stints. That's going to be much, much harder for anyone to kind of explain and kind of come back from, as opposed to just the one, which I'm sure if someone sat in front of you, Mel, and said, hey, I've been there 9 months and look, honestly, it's brutal and it's just not for me. I've learnt these things. I've done this well, but this part I just don't love. And you'd be like, oh, I get it. Of course. Makes sense. Oh, it's not like that here.
Literally, I'd look at the firm and think to myself, yeah, that checks out. They're horrible.
Yeah. And you'd be like, are you working for so-and-so? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, people talk, and we do try to share stories from the trenches. And it's this wonderful collegiality to the law that does exist, believe it or not. But a lot of us are really trying to look out for each other and share like, oh, don't go in there stories. But it's hard because there is secrecy around it. And there are, people are paid to be quiet when they leave and given NDAs and all types of things if it's very poor behavior. But what I am optimistic about the future, because eventually it hits them where it hurts, which is the money, the pocket. If enough people are complaining and having a genuine concern with an actual predator or a bully or just a completely unacceptable human to be in contact with other humans in the workforce, and the law firm or the company needs to essentially pay people to go away and be quiet, that will at some point outweigh the money that this supposed rainmaker brings in. And I have seen it here in Brisbane. There have been reported and public instances of senior partners at big firms who have been kind of given the old golden parachute because the sexual predator and harassment behavior, which was kind of known, secret, but not known, but passed down.
It always is, yeah.
It's horrible, but it's like passed from generation to generation, whispers of like, oh, be careful of such and such. They get handsy at the firm Christmas party.
Oh, the Christmas party is an HR nightmare.
Gosh, I don't even know if it's worth going, to be honest. Like, I don't know. You got to call it. I do love a good Christmas party, but if you're in the wrong environment, oof. All kinds of stuff can happen. But these people are getting called out and they're leaving quietly, but they are leaving because it's too much of a reputational risk. And it's just the right thing to do, of course, to not have this type of people in the workforce. But when they bring in the money, it's been tough for many years. I do see the tides changing and I think that's really wonderful.
Amazing. And look, I have one last note to finish on. And like I said, I've worked with some really fantastic in-house lawyers and hired some fantastic in-house lawyers as well. And I want to share my thoughts on what I've picked up from that hiring on what makes a good in-house lawyer, and for you to add to that, disagree with it, whatever, and that might be a great note for us to finish on. So I think moving from a perspective where you're working with multiple clients and you're giving formalized advice that's going to have to be defensible if something happens or it's the wrong decision or something like that, you have to be very, very sure. And occasionally that means, depending on your firm and your kind of way that they go about things, you need to be quite risk averse sometimes in that advice. Versus being in-house, you're working for a business that needs to be able to conduct business and take certain risks and understand that this might be a problem, but we're going to do it anyway. And we're going to be asking you, I know you said we shouldn't, but we're doing it anyway. I need you to help me make it less risk. You have to be comfortable with that. And I've seen some people that have come through interviews and things like that struggle a little bit with that. And so I think there's like a pragmatism and commerciality that you need to be able to have to come in-house. What have you noticed? What are the things that people really need to have?
That's a big one. I don't say no. I'm not allowed to say no. A good in-house lawyer doesn't say no.
Yes, that's right.
I don't say no. I say yes if.
Here's how we would do that.
Or yes, but. I like to say, yes, we can do this if we also do this, this, and this to try and mitigate the risk. I'll say, absolutely, we can do this, but it's going to cost us a lot of money in X, Y, and Z. That might be fines or penalties or reputational risk, but I mean, anything is possible. And so let's put it all out on the table.
I feel like that's like a psychology hack that parents do with their kids. They'll be like, yeah, we can go outside when you put your shoes on. Like, come on, let's go. Psychology hacks.
It's also an HR thing I do with managers that come to me. I want to fire this person. I'm like, okay, you can fire them right now. You can scream at them and they can work. That's fine. You can do that. But here's what will happen next. And I'm not saying no at all. It's not up to me. You do whatever you want, but we're going to have a mess. And so what about maybe this way?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the other big thing around trying to transition from private practice to in-house and be really great at it is to be able to adjust your communication style and approach depending on who you're speaking with. And the best thing about in-house is that you get to work with all different types of people and you're sitting amongst your client. Your colleague is your client. So, I'm in a tech company. I have software engineers. I have accountants. I have salespeople. I have business development, country development, marketing, digital marketing, social media marketing, the HR team, talent acquisition. Everyone's here. The executive, the board. I get to work across all of these functions and advise everybody. So the way that I speak with an entry level, an inside sales rep or someone who's cold calling, giving them advice or maybe on a new privacy law and how they can't spam or, how they can best work with leads, that's going to be very different to how I might give a presentation to the board. And it might be very different to how I conduct myself in a meeting of my peers with the other executives. And the way that I write and speak, it has to be able to be flexible. And you have to meet people where they are and not assume that they understand anything about legal. They might have only ever worked with a lawyer in a personal capacity, and they might not know that, I'm actually here and to help them. And it's, I'm kind of on the team and here's how you work with us, and not being condescending and presumptuous and not having an air of elitism. A lot of private practice lawyers struggle with that. When you're in the firm, you're the money maker, you're important, you have assistants. You have this whole infrastructure around you. When you come in-house, you kind of nobody. You're a cost center.
You're now a cost center. I've heard that said before about HR inside a law firm. Oh, you're a cost center. I was like, oh, that's awful.
Oh, let's go there. I mean, the gloves are off when people say that, because I'll tell you how many costs I'm saving from, you not being in litigation, but
Totally.
That's just me being salty. I'm just being salty when I say that.
Let me let an unfair dismissal through next time and I'll see what happens. Yeah.
See exactly how much that I'm not costing you. But that is the perception, and it can be very humbling. And a lot of people can't kind of handle it. I think it's kind of funny to see.
Totally. And I love that you can still work with all your law firm. Like, you're not on your own. Having an in-house legal team doesn't mean that you don't work with firms. Like, you just get to kind of liaise with them. And like you said, kind of have that network and connect those dots.
We need our private practice brothers and sisters, because we will outsource often to either mitigate risk, because if something goes wrong, we can claim their insurance. Professional indemnity. No, that's cynical. But you do need to know the bounds of your expertise.
Or a large piece of work that's going to take you completely out of what you have to do day to day. You can't afford to just go offside and do this project.
And I can't run a litigation matter. I've never done that before, and I don't want to learn, and I don't have the infrastructure. So that's exactly when you would brief something out. But I can, however, manage the costs, and then translate the advice back to the business in a way that I know will resonate, because I know them intimately, because they are my client. And so the project management piece, I love doing that. And because I work for a global company, I get to do that with firms all over the world. And I love that. I get to learn about all types of different laws and business cultures and practices in all different countries. But I don't need to be able to practice there, but I do need to know how to get advice from people who practice and then bring that back to the business and implement it. So it's another skill set, project management, that is something that you might not think you might ever need in your legal career, but you certainly do. Working cross-functionally, all of that. It's just so much more than meets the eye, and it's just a wonderful way to practice for sure.
Yeah. I think this episode is a must listen for anyone who's going for any kind of legal interview anywhere around the world, because I think whilst some of the things we discussed were maybe a bit Australian, I think this is very relevant for any legal career globally. Em, any finishing words?
Yeah, I learned heaps. Honourable mention to clerkships, not clerkships.
We learned some pronunciation. Emma and I have debates about pronunciation all the time. I would love it, Mel, if we could hear you pronounce the O word, Em. Do you want to say how you say it?
Okay. Tell me what the Australian Authority Board is, that the Fair Work commissioner type. It starts with O.
Ombudsman.
Oh, say that again.
Ombudsman.
See,
Emma said,
you and Sarah emphasise the M.
we agree, because that is the correct way to say it.
And I emphasise the buds. I say the ombudsman.
Oh, I love that. I haven't heard that pronunciation.
The ombudsman.
The ombudsman. Oh, that's really sweet. It's like flower buds or something.
We've fought over this so long. I'm like,
Emma's like the ombudsman.
no, that's you. I'm like, where is this unofficial rule that we're all going ombudsman? Like, why? It's a quick O. It's ombudsman. Anyway, agree to disagree.
You know, the other one that gets people is privacy and privacy.
Which are you before I insult you?
Oh, I go privacy.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're friends. Yeah.
I mean, privacy is like, I guess you're going privy. That's where you're kind of like getting that from. But no, I can't.
Or me and Sarah have one. So you've got your, when you're applying for jobs, CV, or the other word that starts with R. How do you say that?
Resume.
Resume, same as me. Sarah puts a bit of spice on it and says resume.
Oh.
She puts the ZSH. She does the zhuzh. And I say resume.
Resume.
We could go on all day.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mel. This has been an incredible episode. I'm sorry we took so much of your time.
Oh my gosh, no, don't apologize.
I think our listeners are going to absolutely love this, and they can find you in so many places. We're going to put all of your wonderful links down below. You need to go and listen to Mel's podcast, Counsel, or find her on TikTok or Instagram at The In-House Lawyer, but that'll all be down in our description box. So you can go and click it and go follow her, ask her questions. If you're in Brisbane, hit her up for a referral.
Hit me up. We'll get coffee, whatever. It's all good.
Epic. And I'm so glad the stars aligned for this. Makes me so happy.
Thank you so much.
Yay. So lovely. Thank you again for having me. And I just want to shout out what you two are doing. I think it's absolutely awesome. Filling a space, giving a voice to lots of young people and kind of early mid-career, a lot of people that identify as female, maybe socially conditioned as female, and want to learn from others and maybe find people who are going along similar path to them so that they can share the wisdom back. And I just want to thank you for creating this space to do that. It's just been such a joy connecting with your content. And yeah, I'm adding it to my toolkit because I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. And you can direct people to come and listen to this episode that's with you, with us.
It's win-win.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Interview Boss. If you like hearing the sound of our Aussie accents, follow us on Apple or Spotify, or better yet, send this to someone else who really needs our podcast. That's how we can help even more people, and we hit the charts, people find us, we get better guests, it all starts happening. We get more people coming to us like Mel. For more advice, some videos, some clips from the podcast, check us out on Instagram at Interview Boss, and please chuck us a follow.
We've been your job search besties and helped you in some way. There's a cool way you can support the show. Shout us a virtual coffee.
We get a huge kick out of reading all of your success stories. Head to buymeacoffee.com/interviewboss and shout us a cuppa.
If you keep us caffeinated, we can keep the content coming.